wake up, the city with the steam and brew. Sunshine rising, sky so blue. Pushing the cart down cobblestone, serving up smiles, never alone. From alleyways to busy squares, he's got magic in the air. Every pour's a little spark, morning joy right from the cart. Cup by cup he's spreading cheer, laughter rising with the gear. Espresso dreams and mocha light, warming hearts from day to night. Cup by cup the tale begins, with every swirl the world grins. Coffee boy on the go, let the daily adventure flow. Dodging pigeons, chatting with cats, jokes with joggers, tips and hats. Rain or shine, he rolls along. Life's a rhythm, life's a song. Whistling tunes, the beans are hot. He's got stories in every pot. Steam and laughter fill the street, where hustle and happiness meet. Cup by cup he's spreading cheer, laughter rising with the gear. Espresso dreams and mocha light, warming hearts from day to night. Cup by cup the tale begins, with every swirl the world grins. Coffee boy on the go, let the daily adventure flow. One cup, one smile, one step at a time. Oh, life's better with a little caffeine and a whole lot of sunshine.
Hi guys, I'm Eugenio. This is my story.
1, 2, 3.
Hello, my name is Eugenio, and I was born in Italy, in Rome, and I came to Australia in 1991, following my wife that I met overseas in London. And basically, I've been operating my business for the last almost 10 years, but I've been at the Queen Victoria market operating for 2.5 years. I was born in Italy, in Rome, and since I was a kid, I've been introduced to hospitality. My dad always worked in hospitality. He worked in a five-star hotel, started from scratch. And at one stage, I wanted to follow his footsteps, and that's the reason why I actually I'm involved with coffee and coffee business and hospitality in general. So because I was very young when I started working, I was 14 years old, and I wasn't able to start working with my dad because he was working in a five-star hotel. And so what I did is I sort of went to do an apprenticeship on the job, so working as apprentice barista, and I wasn't allowed to touch the coffee machine. That's basically, at the beginning, back in the old days, it was old school hospitality, which means they would just kick you if you didn't do well the job. If you do the wrong coffee, they will kick your shin, and so that way you learn. Also, I would get smacked as well. So there was a big. I used to go home crying because of the many kicks and many smacks that I received throughout the entire apprenticeship. But to be honest, it paid off. The reason why is because I learned so much from them, and they were my first mentors of this beautiful world of coffee business, or as you call it, barista. So to be honest, barista in Italy means working behind the bar. So that means a kind of a bartender. So, but you have to be able to do not just coffee, but every kind of selection of what's involved in a cafe bar. So that means, like for example, you have to be able to make sandwiches, but you might have to be able to prepare mayonnaise from scratch. You might have to cook from scratch as well. The little things, like very simple things, so that you can prepare then the sandwiches, the panini, what we call it back in Italy. And so that's basically the reason why it took me also 3 years to become fully qualified, because that's what it's all about. So, as well as coffee. But coffee, they won't allow you to touch the machine, not at all. So that was secondary. That took, like I said, a long time. Eventually, I was able to start making my own coffee. But at the beginning, you just deliver coffee. So the main barista, back in Rome, we used to deliver coffee to the offices because I worked right in the center of Rome. Basically, the famous Spanish Steps and Trevi Fountain. They are the places where I worked at. So we had lots of tourists around there, lots of also local people, politicians, and so on. So my job was back then to do only cleaning and as well as delivering coffee in their offices. And I met a lot of politicians and few famous actors and actors back then. So that was my introduction to hospitality. Also, so for me, it was preparing my trays with all the things that you need to sugar sticks and sticks to stir the coffee, stir the sugar, and then the main barista will make the coffee, and then I would cover up and then take it to the offices where basically the people that order the coffee back then. So that's basically wrapped in short what I've done. But also I worked. Eventually, I ended up to work with my dad. My dad, like I said, there was a 5-star hotel. Working. He worked his way up to the Metro D in the famous Via Veneto, which is one of the main luxurious streets in Rome. And there I worked in various roles as apprentice or commis, what they call a commis, which is apprentice waiter. And I worked all the way up to chef de rang, which is chef de rang is the old school that we used to do, like Gary Don. So that means you cook in front of the customer. That's the old school service that was provided back then. I think today you probably find some of the 5-star hotels, maybe. I'm not too sure here in Melbourne, Australia, but I know that in Europe they still exist. Some of those old school catering, not catering, but Gary Don service. So that you provide the service in front of the customer, and so on. Or the silver service, basically, that's what it's called as well in England. And so that's what I've done. I worked my way up as a chef de rang. I worked with my dad also on the floors too, delivering breakfast up to the rooms. I used to work with the barmen, making cocktails, and I sort of covered every area of the front of the house. So that's how it is in the hospitality business, especially in hotels. So that the more you know, the better it is for you, because you can also upsell other product within the hotel. So. Or any establishment that you're working at is always a good idea. You know every area or every aspect of where you're working at. So that's basically my story behind when I started working as a hospitality business. And yeah, that's it. That's me. Thank you. As I mentioned, I worked in various cafe bars in Rome, and one of those cafe bars that I worked at, it was in Via del Boschetto, which is one of the small streets in lane kind of in Rome, in central Rome. So at that time, I decided that I wanted to learn English, and I signed up in an English school in Rome. And there was this teacher. The teacher was an English lady, and she said to me, "I think the best way to learn English is go on the spot and actually where to speak the language, which is England, America, Australia." And so what I did is I decided that my first stop would probably would be I was tossed between France, learning French or English or English. So, but I decided to go for English because I thought probably it's more international. You can work everywhere in the world. So, and that's why I decided to leave Rome for going to London. So in that little bar that I was working at, there used to come this this teacher. That she was a friend. Her daughter was a friend of my wife, my future wife. So basically, what happens is that they told me that if you're going to London, you have to go and meet this Fiorina, which is my wife. And the reason why is because I used to go and say hi. I said, but I don't know what she thinks of me because I don't know her. Just go and say hi. That's what they told me. And say hi from Milena. I said, okay, that's what I'm going to do.
Really?
So through an agency, I found a way that I paid the ticket, and as well they actually found me a job in outside of London. So it was a place called the Colchester. But I didn't know back then where it was. So I decided, okay, leave, pack everything, pack my luggage, and go to London. The only thing is that this place was a bit far from London. It was actually a bit far. And I arrived in the middle of the night, which was it was like a midnight, and it was very hard because I didn't speak English at all. I didn't speak English any word. So anyway, I managed a way to go to this place, which was called the King's Park Hotel. And permanently they do functions there. They were doing lots of functions because it was a period of Christmas period. There was a lot of Christmas functions, and quite big in England for that. And it was also part of the civil service that I was already accustomed because as I mentioned before, I already worked in this sort of service style. And so that's what I did. I embarked myself and started working this King's Park Hotel. I worked for about 3 months, but it was an issue because my English was terrible. I didn't speak one word of English. In the meantime, I decided that I wanted to go and say hi to my future wife. And I contacted her and I said, look, I'm Eugenio, friend of Milena. Milena said, send me here, say hi. And she didn't want to know me, to be honest, at the beginning. But then eventually we become, we started frequenting each other, and she became my girlfriend. And so that's basically how I met my wife. And then eventually she asked me, she said, look, I think it's probably a good idea for you to come to Australia, Melbourne, where I come from. It'd be easier for you to learn English there because it was much wider here than back in England, back in London. So we lived in London for 1.5, almost 2 years, and we decided to come to Australia, even though I didn't know what it was back then. So that was in 1989 when I left for Italy to go to London. And then during the 1989, 90, and then eventually we lived in Italy for about 6 months with my wife to go and meet my parents as well. Because by then we went together with my wife as partners, and then we came here in 1991. We came to Melbourne, Australia, in 1991. I was 24 years old, and yeah, it was a very different from Italy. Definitely, I had a big shock. I didn't like it at the beginning. I was very surprised how. I thought it would be different, but it was very quiet back then. Yeah, in Melbourne. It wasn't as established as it is today. I think today developed in big time in Melbourne compared to when I arrived here in 1991. They've done a lot of work, all of the infrastructures of Melbourne, new roads, lots of new buildings. I ended up to work at the Sheraton Hotel, which is now the Langham Hotel. And back then, there was the only building that was just being built. So after that, all the South Gate, it wasn't there. the South Gate, the Crown Casino wasn't there. Everything was all buildings, nothing was there. So you can imagine it was very, very quiet in terms of the way, the lifestyle. There were no jobs back then because at the beginning, at that time, there was an economic crash. So one or two the biggest banks they collapsed. So there was no jobs, and I struggled at the really beginning for 3 months. I couldn't find a job, and it was terrible. Then there was no internet, and so I was stuck to the newspaper. But on the newspaper there was nobody published any jobs back then. There was no availability anywhere. So, and that's basically I got a shock of my life in terms of the way it was run. Just the lifestyle in general wasn't the same as obviously I got used to back in Italy, Rome, the old country. I didn't really enjoy the very beginning. So anyway, so eventually I did find a job. Eventually I did find a way to by meeting new people, and then sort of slowly started working. In fact, I found it so hard to establish here in Melbourne. That eventually, so we got married with my wife, and then eventually I was working and everything, but then eventually I decided I want to go back. I was missing my parents a lot, I was missing my friends, my family overall, and that's the reason why at the end I decided that I want to go back, and I ended up to buy the ticket to go back to Italy without telling my wife, and she got the frightened of her life. I called her at work and I said, listen, I'm going back to Italy. She goes, are you crazy? I said, no, I said, no, I'm not crazy. I'm missing my country. I'm missing my lifestyle there. And she goes, I said to my wife, look, I already got the tickets. If you love me, you follow me. Otherwise, I'll leave you here. She goes, okay, let's do this way. If you can find me a job and a place to stay so that we don't stay with my parents, then I'll think about it and I'll move with you. I said, okay. So eventually I went back, and it didn't take me long to find 2 weeks before I found me a job, my wife a job, and an apartment to stay. So at the end we did. So she came over just a few days after, and we started working, both of us, in this. I was working as a barista, she was working as a sales assistant, just opposite to me in a famous Spanish Steps nearby there. And it was a beautiful environment, beautiful buildings there. It's the old city. Everything was working well, but then to be honest, we found that at the end it was a little bit hard to accomplish something, and that's the reason why we decided to come back to Australia after 1.5 years. We decided that probably life would be easier here. You have more opportunities and you can do a bit more here, to be honest, compared to the old country. And so we decided to come back. And that's why we then come back to Australia after 1.5 years. So I started so after all these years I've been working in hospitality as a mentor. I started in 1980, and I came to Australia in 1991, but I always worked in the coffee industry as a barista in a hotel, five-star hotel, catering and all that. So always working coffee making. So always my dream to basically open up my own little business, and I had an opportunity about 10 years ago. So I started my business about 2016. After so many years that I've spent here in Melbourne, I decided that there was a time for me now to open up this little opportunity that I had about a three-wheeler coffee van, which is imported from Italy, and it's a classic vehicle that they use over there to transport vegetables or fruit or goods in general. But at the moment, it's a trend. It's been a trend for a while now back in Italy to transform this little van into for food vendors. So, like for example, in Italy they sell panini, they make pasta, they sell pizza from there. But because my industry has always been coffee, I decided that I wanted to put a coffee machine on the van and then basically sell my coffee out of the machine, out of this coffee cart. Um, and so in 2016, I started my little business called the Romape Cibo da Strada. Romape because I thought I decided that it goes well from where I come from, Roma, and the vehicle is called Ape. So Ape in Italian means bee. So the people behind this vehicle is the Piaggio, which is the people behind they invented the Vespa. The Vespa in Italian means horse, and so this was an alternative for people to be transported after the Second World War because they struggled to buy cars. So they thought that the engineer behind this, they thought, okay, let's make it something cheaper. So they put a cover over the Vespa and it became a vehicle for transporting people, basically. And that's how it started. So they had the Wasp and now they have the bee as well. So and yeah, so that's how it started. So Romape, Ape means bee, and that's how they put it together, Romape. And then Cibo da Strada, which means street food in Italian. When I started my little business, I started selling also kind of street food, which is all the savory product that you find in a classical Roman street. So, for example, little pizza, sette, arancini, which in Rome we call it the supplì, but the same principle. So, fried rice and mozzarella cheese and filo, and so on with the tomato sauce and so on. So then also, I was selling all these bits and pieces of olives, stuffed olives, fried olives. So lots of different things that I used to sell back then. But so I started operating in a small shopping center. They call it homemaker center. They used to sell home things for home. Unfortunately, after the COVID, things didn't do so well. And so I was forced to get out, and there was not many people back then. I applied at the Queen Victoria Market 7 years prior that when I started here, which means that it took me all this time. Eventually, they called me and they asked me if I wanted to start operating at the Queen Victoria Market, which obviously for me has been an honor and pleasure to be part of this historic market. It's the biggest market in Australia, and probably and the oldest as well. So it's a pleasure and an honor to be part of this beautiful community market. It's incredible. It's been amazing. I've been operating here for the last 2.5 years. I introduced my coffee blend, which from the really beginning that I started my business with my coffee blend. And that's what we've been doing. We've been selling our own coffee as well as traditional Italian donuts, which basically, I think I mentioned that before, but they're made by a local Italian family. They make everything by hand. It's a handmade, homemade, and it's a third generation Italian. So also they came after the Second World War, continued to do what they were doing back in Italy, which is always been food. Particularly donuts and pastries are amazing to die for. So it goes well with my concept, my little 3-wheeler coffee van, and my coffee blend, as well as my food that we sell. So we operate at the Queen Victoria Market every Tuesday, and then Thursday to Sunday, as well as we do what they call it the night market. So whenever it's the night market is on, like there is usually the summer night market, the winter night market. In between there are also the smaller versions of the night market as well. So we also part of that too, and we are very proud and very honored to be part of this. Like I said, of this operation here at the market. Great so far. So we're operating here and being part of this great community. As I mentioned, I came to Australia in 1991. And to be honest with you, a lot has changed, particularly in the coffee industry. When I came to Melbourne, there was only you can count how many coffee places there were, good ones, where they could make a good espresso, but not only that, but also the milk. Everybody used to boil the milk, used to make big bubbles, used to burn the milk. It was terrible, shocking. You couldn't drink a decent coffee back then. So since then, 1991 to we're talking about 2025 now, it's been a huge improvement to the point that now we call it Melbourne, the coffee capital of Australia. But only that, not only coffee capital of Australia, now everyone that travels overseas and they're asking, where are you from Melbourne? Wow. People they know everywhere that Melbourne coffee is the best coffee. Not because we produce coffee in Melbourne, but because the people behind the scenes study from the roasters, people that select the coffee beans and so on, starting from them and then going to all the way to operation of the coffee cafes and barista behind the scenes. Also, they made a huge improvement. They understand exactly how it's done, what needs to be done in order to make a good espresso coffee. So, but I must say that Italians have played a big impact in this field, because if it wasn't for the Italian people, that's the reason why we're famous for that, because the Italians are the ones that they invented the coffee machine. So they in Italy, it was invented the first coffee machine, and in the 1930s, late 30s, and that's the reason why, actually 1928 to be exactly, but the first coffee machine was actually more filtered coffee, so it was more like a percolated coffee, let's say. We waited until the late 38, 40s when we started introducing, when they actually through engineering, they produced this beautiful espresso machine that we know today as espresso coffee. And so the Italian influenced a lot in the coffee industry. They were the ones that they introduced espresso coffee to the world, but also not only with the coffee machine, by making good blends. So I must say that a lot of the influence, because of that, then they opened up schools here in Melbourne of hospitality schools, which I must say also have been part of this industry too. So for a while, I was a full-time hospitality trainer. I went to school, I studied to become a hospitality trainer. And from there, I've been involved into the coffee training industry to be able to train people in the coffee making skills, basically, to become a qualified barista. And so it's been written books, it's been written, videos been made about coffee making skills, particularly the tapes played good impact in this, but also private businesses. So as slowly as time went on, from 91 until now, there's been a lot of Italians coming through, and it's been opening businesses after business, and people that working into these businesses, then they went to open up their own business, learning the skills of how to make a good espresso, how to make a good coffee in general, overall. So, and that's why today we have the coffee capital of Australia, Melbourne, number one. Allora, so now talking about my business is called the Romape Cibo da Strada. That's the name of the business, but also we have a name for our own coffee blend. So we started with, from the really beginning of my coffee operation business, which is, like I said, since 2016, I wanted to create something Italian, something with an Italian flair, but with a little bit more kick. Since I come from Italy myself, and the reason why I know that the coffee in Italy is a little bit lighter, because in Italy they drink coffee as an espresso. So espresso is a bit more mellow, a bit more softer, a bit more sweeter. That's because they use 100% Arabica coffee. And I love that coffee. It's beautiful. But because I've been working here since 1991, I've been living in Australia. A lot of people that drink coffee with milk in Melbourne, or in Australia in general. So We decided to make our blend with a little bit more kick, a little bit more stronger than what you find in Italy, but still with the same principle of an Italian flavor. So what we did instead, we created this called the Latte del Caffè Espresso. Latte del Caffè Espresso, which means the art of espresso coffee. So what we do is in our blend, we source the coffee beans from Brazil, Papua New Guinea, India, and Indonesia. We use a blend of 70% Arabica and 30% Robusta, which means by adding Robusta into the coffee, it gives the kick and it gives you the nice and strong flavor. But all coffee is not acidic, which you find that some of the coffee beans out there, they can be quite acidic when you drink as an espresso coffee, but not all coffee. There's no acidity in all coffee at all. But at the same time, all coffee is quite mellow. It's been smooth, I should say, not too mellow because it's a bit strong. Originally, we wanted to create something really strong, so that goes well with the milk. So when we started our first coffee batch, it was done with the 50% Arabica and 50% Robusta. But to be honest, I had a lot of complaints about the coffee because people they thought it was burnt, but in effect it wasn't burnt. It was actually quite very strong, and that's because of the 50% Robusta. But what we done is the company that we created this blend together. We decided to reduce the amount of instead of 30% Robusta, we do 50% Robusta. We decided to go for 70% Arabica and 30% Robusta, so that way, instead of having two blends, we use one blend for both espresso and the coffee with milk. Basically, this is still to do with the coffee. I was actually impressed by this actor that he was doing advertisement television for one brand in Italy. I can say Lavazza Coffee, and he was saying, "Il caffè è un piacere. Se non è buono, che piacere è?" And what that means is, il caffè, it's a pleasure, but if it's not good, what pleasure is gonna be? No pleasure. So. And that, to me, that is stand out all this time. Since I was a kid, I remember I used to listen to this proverb, and I think it's amazing because it means a lot to the coffee industry and to the people that actually make coffee. Because coffee should be a pleasure to drink, and not just it's not just an art and a skill, but it should be a pleasure and a love and a passion to make this coffee. But also one more proverb that I found that it was very interesting since I was a kid. It says, tu fatti affari tuoi che campi 100 anni in più, which means mind your business that you live up to 100 years old. That is so true, especially in Italy because you don't know who you count, who you encounter, and so that's why they say mind your business so that you can actually live a little bit longer. When I started looking for a job, one funny thing, because I didn't speak English back then, I tried to incorporate, I tried to mix with the rest of the people and the culture here, and obviously try to learn the language. But at the same time, it was a struggle. It was a bit of a struggle. Anyway, one funny story that I remember is when I went to my really first position or job that I found, it was at the Sports Care Centre, which is in Collins Street in Melbourne, and it was run by this company that they had a food court there. So they had a food court with all the different types of food available, but as well there was a bar in the middle. It was a big bar with a coffee machine in it. So when I knock at the door and I ask the manager, and the manager says, "How are you? What do you do?" And I said, "I'm a barista." And he goes, "Oh, you're a barista." I said, "Barista? No, I'm not a lawyer," because I found out that barista means lawyer in English. But barista is a different word from barista. So, and there was this misunderstanding, which I said, no, I'm not a barista or a lawyer. I'm actually coffee maker. Oh, okay, coffee maker. Yes, you do need a coffee maker. Actually, you good with coffee? I said, yeah. Well, I've been doing that for the last 10 years in Italy, in Rome. And that's where I come from. He goes, okay, if you're good at it, then let's try. You start tomorrow. I said, okay. So when I started the next day, they didn't see anything like that before, and that was my first day of work when that I started working. My very first job in Melbourne. That's how I started working here in Melbourne. But for me that was a little bit funny. And I'll tell the story all over again because it's so funny. Back then they didn't use the word barista, it was a bit fun. As I mentioned, so I started my business in 2016, and I ended up to operate at the Queen Victoria Market since 2.5 years ago now, almost 3 years. And so we managed to have a good reputation so far at the Queen Victoria Market. So for us, I guess it plays an important role, or coffee stand, or coffee bag, or coffee cart, whichever way you want to call it, because we provide coffee to the mass, to the people. But the way we provide coffee is not because we're not mass produce of coffee. We're just a small family business. So family, I must say, it's only me running this business. And I do have some helpers as well that help me to run my business too. But it's not a big, how can I say, it's not a big organization. It's not mass produce coffee. So for us, it's a pleasure. It's part of my life. It's what I do every day. I get up at 4 o'clock in the morning to start setting up my business here at the Victoria Market around 5:30, and I get ready by 6:30. And so you must love this. Well, you can't just think about money. You can't just think about become famous. No, it's all to do with the love and passion and understanding and respect for people. And so here it's such a small. It's a big community, but at the same time very small. So it's like a kind of a small town that to me. I look at this working or operating here at the market. It's like operating in a small town in the countryside of Rome, and that's why I see it. And the reason why, because it's a small community, everybody knows each other, and so we ended up to serve coffee also from outside of Melbourne. That means that a lot of tourists pass by from every country. We had recently. I had an email written from a Chinese gentleman. He came here as a tourist. He drank our coffee. He loved the coffee. Went back to China with our coffee blend, and he sent me an email and saying, "Oh, can you send me more beans back in China?" I said, "Yeah, I can do that. The only thing is it will cost you a bit of money for the postage, for the mailing copy." But yeah, we serve coffee to all over the world. People that are coming from all over the world, Malaysia, Singapore, China, Japan, Europe, but just in general, overall, Europe, America, Canada, from everywhere. And people, when they're coming back to Australia, which happened before, happened that they ended up to come back here to our stand because they found that our coffee is lovely. We give attention to details, we provide a good service. Most important, coffee is great, and so people they get accustomed to our coffee blend and service that we provide. So I suppose that we play an important role at the Queen Victoria Market for our coffee and all services that we provide. And in such a short amount of time, we also been part of we've been mentioned on the Lonely Planet magazine or booklet, which is now. It's very important because it's a booklet that used to be very fashionable back in the old days. But even today, I found a tourist that came with the guide in his hand and he says, "I'm looking for this coffee stand." I said, "Oh, why specifically this one?" Because you're on the on the guide. I said, "Oh, what do you mean?" Because yeah, you've been mentioned on the lonely planet. So I couldn't believe it. So he showed me, and it says Roma per cibo da strada. Provide a great cornetti, which is like Italian croissant, and beautiful coffee. So we're so proud of that. And as well, in 2.5 years, we've received a few they've been acknowledged in the restaurant guru for Roma Cibo da Strada, providing good food and good service and good coffee, as well as we won the best coffee business enterprise of Melbourne from APAC Insider, which is a company that comes from England, and they contacted us and they said that we are best in the market in this specific category. And so yeah, so most recently we won one for the best Italian made coffee award, and then also we've been acknowledged for a few awards around Melbourne, and that's why we are very proud. And in such a short time, it's very we're so blessed, I guess, as well at the same time. It's not easy in this world, especially today. Competition is very fierce. There a lot of competition out there, a lot of coffee businesses, but also around coffee already around the Queen Victoria market, we have lots of competition out here. So for us, it's a pleasure, but it's always an honor, and we try to strive for better and better and better to make the service and coffee service the best we can. So thank you. So, as I mentioned, I started my business in 2016, and since then it's been few challenges. As you know, we unfortunately had COVID, what everybody struggled during that time, but not only personally, but business-wise. So for me, has impacted my business because I was operating in a small homemaker center, and that's when I started operating my business. And so I was there for about 5 years. I built up my business to a good point where I had lots of followers coming almost every day, and especially weekend, it was quite big. Then eventually COVID hit, and that's when I didn't know what to do because there was no more customers coming to the shopping center, so it was dead. At that time, also the challenges was that I didn't know what to do because if I stayed there, and the people there behind the shopping center, instead of helping us, they actually asked me for double the rent. I said, how do I afford that? I can afford that when there's no customers that pay the rent. When it's supposed to be the other way around. You're supposed to help me anyway. So I ended up there. After that, we decided to split. So I decided to leave, and that was a challenge for me because I didn't know at the same time. I thought, what am I going to do now? So it was under COVID period. At that time, I decided that I wanted to open a coffee business, a small shop. So I thought nearby. So my first shopping center was situated in Chester. And then from there, I went to Carnegie. So nearby, I thought since people that know me from these areas, I thought, okay, let's see if I can open up something in utilizing my van so that I don't have to start from scratch. So that's what I did. I ended up to place my van inside the shop and operate from inside the shop, but it was still under COVID. So that means that at that time, believe it or not, it was actually not bad because I had lots of people coming in, people that I already knew my business, and so in a way it was quite good. The challenge was how to retain these customers. How do you, because it wasn't, so the van was inside the shop and it was very hard. So people that didn't really see what was all about. So at the end, also the challenge was when they started opening up again. So there was no more closure. Everything was open and from the lockdown. So at that point, that's when everything went to start to slow down even more than before. And so I did apply here at the market, at the Queen Victoria market, when I started my business, so 7 years prior. and always been refused because obviously they didn't need anybody like myself to operate the market back then, because obviously there was no business. Eventually they called me at the right time, at the right place, at the right time. So when I left the shop, because I decided that I wasn't able to continue because I didn't make any money back then. So what do I do? I left the shop and I said, okay, what am I going to do now? I did apply different positions to find a job, even at the post. Then to go back as a trainer as well, a trainer. So I did find a different jobs position, but lucky enough, thank God, that basically you gave me the opportunity to continue with my business operating at the Qui Victoria market. So they called me exactly when I left the shop, and they called me and say, "Can we please have an interview because we would like to see how you go if you want to operate at the market." I said, "Let's try. Let's see what happens." And so that's how basically I overcome my challenges. My challenges was how to maintain my business. And that was just, to be honest, that was also thanks to God that I was able to continue this and give me the opportunity to continue with my business, and that's how I survived. So when I started working at the market, at the Victoria market, we were operating only 4 days a week, even though they wanted always me to operate 5 days a week. And then eventually, then I ended up to operate 6 days a week. So now we do every day that the market is open, Tuesday, then Thursday to Sunday. And also we do Wednesday night market as well, which is the night market. And so there you go. That's how we sort of managed to continue, even though I had the challenge, because all my family, they were saying, and friends as well, they say, "Oh, why do you keep the van? Well, just sell it so that at least you make some money, and then, and then you move on and move along so you can find another job." But for me, I didn't want to do that because I want to continue my dream. My dream was to continue with the coffee business, my own business, to operate my own business. And I did that. So I would say never give up, never give up. So, and that's what I did. I continue and I persist and I continue to strive. And that's basically still here now at Victoria Market and continue to operate my beautiful business that I love so much. And I thank everyone for all support and everything that has been provided to us so far. Thank you. Ok, so allora, qui siamo a Qui Victoria Market. Come ho menzionato, sto operando il mio piccolo business, sono 2 anni e mezzo che sono qui al mercato e ho conosciuto tantissima gente con la piccola comunità che noi abbiamo qui al mercato. Ed una di queste persone che opera qui al mercato mi ha detto che ho la voce che potrei cantare. Io non ho mai pensato di cantare, però ho detto, sai che ti dico, quasi quasi faccio una cosa del genere. E allora mi sono iscritto faccio dei programmi di canzone, una scuola di canto praticamente, per operare, per cantare opera. E quindi ho iniziato, adesso sono quasi 2 mesi che ho iniziato a cantare opera, le canzoni, non canto ancora, però sto facendo le canzoni, sto imparando la base per imparare a cantare opera, e adesso praticamente siamo nel mezzo di questa cosa che mi fa tantissimo piacere, perché veramente è diventata una passione adesso per me, imparare a cantare opera. Il mio idolo è Pavarotti, io penso che tantissime persone già conoscono Pavarotti, ma la mia ultimamente la cosa che vorrei fare tantissimo è cantare una canzone dedicata ai miei genitori in Italia, che loro hanno fatto tantissimo per me. E sono veramente grato a loro per quello che hanno fatto per me quando sono cresciuto, quando ero piccolo. E quindi vorrei dedicare tantissimo questa cosa a loro, questa canzone che veramente ho nel cuore, rimane sempre nel cuore. I genitori sono sempre parte della tua vita e quindi vorrei tantissimo fare una cosa del genere perché se lo sono veramente guadagnato, diciamo, questa cosa, e quindi sono veramente grato a loro per quello che hanno fatto per me. Grazie. Thank you very much for listening to my story. Grazie mille.